Being that I've been to Guyana a few times now, one of the common questions I get from people, especially people from other parts of the Caribbean that I've come to know, is how is it there? Well, I went to Guyana for the first time in early 2014, a place that was never really on my radar as a place I wanted to travel to. In the middle of the previous year, I had created a Facebook page dedicated to talking about the Caribbean, and one of the first places I profiled was Guyana. But it was more for comedic purposes. While I did know a bit about the country, especially knowing where it actually was, something many falter on, I really did not know much about the place other than that it was heavily forested and, of course, Jonestown, a created compound in northwestern Guyana where the psychotic Jim Jones led over 900 people to their deaths back in 1979. So as a result, I had this notion that people living there spent their days avoiding 30-foot anacondas and jaguars. I just thought the populated areas were teeming with all types of dangerous creatures trying to kill everybody, like Australia. So, while I was profiling the country, someone from the country, living in the country at the time, spotted my ignorance and informed me that was not the case, and that these supposed deadly creatures were not commonplace, at least in and around the capital city of Georgetown. She actually invited me to come down to see the place for myself so I could put my fears and ignorance to rest. Despite this, there was really never a thought in my mind that I was going to go and visit a place like Guyana. Well, as fate would have it, that person checking my nonsense would become my girlfriend and eventually my wife. The possibility of going to Guyana became a reality upon meeting her. Talk about a quick escalation, right? So in early 2014, I made that trip to Guyana, and I can say it was one of the best decisions of my life. Well, I flew out of Kennedy Airport in New York City on a freezing February night, just past midnight, for the longest flight of my life, one lasting about 5 hours and 45 minutes. At the time of year, basically at that time of the year, Guyana is 1 hour ahead of New York City. So when I arrived over its airspace, it was daylight. And the first thing that caught my attention was the sheer vastness of the place and the expanse of the deeply verdant forests in every direction that my eye could see. I also noticed something rather odd, and that is the Atlantic waters offshore was rusty brown, something I would later explore and find out why. So after being picked up from the airport and heading out to where I would be staying, the thing I took away most was the old world charm of the place. It is alleged to be the second or third poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and if architecture is evidence of this, you can see it scattered about with a few wooden homes on stilts. There were, however, often contrasted, or I should say these were, however, often contrasted by massive homes, some with often bright and vivid colors, which I will talk about in another video. In fact, at some points, there were entire communities with rather elegant homes. At a point in the ride from Georgetown, heading to Georgetown from the airport, I spotted a large body of water that turned out to be the Demerara River. While I have flown over the mighty Mississippi River in the United States thousands of feet up, I had never in my life been that close to such a large river. So to say I marveled at this wonder was really an understatement. But I would go on to know this river rather well. So this is the first part on this series about Guyana and my trips to Guyana, total of 6. So stay tuned for the next video in this installment, where we'll talk a little bit more about my first trip to Guyana. hopefully leading all the way up to my final trip. Stay tuned until next video.